Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what is going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joining you for another Steelers Q&A show. You know, the funny thing is, someone asked me the other day, why is it the Steelers Q&A? And I told them it's because when we do shows, a lot of times people ask tons of questions that we just can't get to. So what we decided to do is on days that we want to do a show, we want to give you some content, but we don't really have any clear-cut guide that's going to get us to that, full show length. We open it up to the Steelers Q&A, and we allow you to dictate some of the conversation that we have during the show. But we have a lot to talk about today, and that's the trio of Steelers that are getting into the Hall of Fame. And joining me to talk about that is none other than deputy editor. I've never called it. He's my number two. He's like number two on Austin Powers. So Dave Schofield, what's going on?
I'm the deuce, huh? The deuce is loose.
Number two,
It's going. I'm ready. It's so funny. As much as I'm ready to watch this game, and I'm kind of hoping it's going to be a really good game, I'm still kind of in mourning that this is the last day that I'm waking up of this season to where there's going to be football being played, because it's always that long off season. It's, what is it? Almost exactly 6 months to the day until the Hall of Fame game.
I think so. I think you're right.
I mean, it might be 6 months. 6 months. Yep.
Maybe it was just because of the crazy week and the drama that surrounded the tragedy with Kobe Bryant a week from today. And I don't know what it was, but I'm going to watch the Super Bowl, but I'm not that excited for the Super Bowl. To be honest with you, I was more excited last night when I was watching Troy Polamalu and Bill Cowher having these intimate discussions backstage before they were introduced at the NFL honors ceremony. I was watching Troy in tears. I've said this to people before. You get these players that are transcendent players, and Troy would fall into that generational talent. I don't think you're going to see another Troy Polamalu anytime soon in the NFL. But my wife asked me this morning, Troy has always been her favorite. She's always loved Troy. She has a Troy jersey. She always loved Troy Polamalu, and I'm fine with that. She said, what made Troy so special? And there's a lot of answers, but Dave, when you think of Troy Polamalu and what made him so special, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Pure instinct.
Yeah.
Honestly, he just had an instinct of where to go, when to be there. I mean, how he would constantly time those jumps over the line of scrimmage. That's just instinct. I mean, of course, it's some paying attention and getting an idea what's going on. He just seemed to go to where the ball was. And he, was it last night or an interview before that where he talked about that was part of his struggles with his rookie year, is that he was just trying to make the play so much and not just playing on instinct. And when he did that, he was just absolutely amazing.
If I think of one word, he's a game changer. He was that guy that could make a play that would completely alter the outcome of the game. And you can think of it, two plays come to mind in particular. Obviously, the AFC Championship interception. It was returned for a touchdown against the Ravens. And then another play, I want to say it was 2010 maybe, where it was the play on, I think it was Sunday Night Football. He comes off the edge, hits Joe Flacco's arm, causes the fumble. I think Woodley recovered that fumble and almost got into the end zone. That was the same game where Ben rolled out to the right, hit Santonio Holmes in the end zone. And there was the whole debate of whether the ball got over the line because his feet were in the end zone, but the ball, he made plays when you needed a play. And it's not always, there's no guarantee in the NFL and in football. And trust me, he guessed wrong at times too. But this leads me to my next question. Out of all the plays that Troy has made, if you could say which one was your favorite, which one is it? You can even give me a top. You can give me like a few, because there's so many. Narrowing it down to one is a near impossibility. And if you're watching live on YouTube, and if you didn't know, we have a YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com, search BTSC Steelers Radio. If you're watching live and you're in the live chat, let us know. I want to know. Give me like your top three Troy plays during his career. And there's so many. Narrow them down. What do you got, Dave?
I mean, it's the one that stands out more than anything is because of where it was that AFC Championship game sealing interception return for the time. I've watched that play probably in the last 3 days, I've probably watched that play 50 times, because if I'm scrolling on Twitter and somebody shares that video, I watch it every time it comes across my feed. I mean, I'm like, I'm going to watch it. It's the same thing with the Harrison interception in the Super Bowl, the Santonio Holmes catch in the Super Bowl. Anytime that comes across my feed, Facebook or Twitter, I try to stay off social media, not all the time, but if I see that, I'm going to take 30 seconds to a minute and watch it every time. Yeah. Every time. What should have been the play that I remember of his more than anything was his game-sealing interception against the Colts in the playoffs in 2005, which for some ridiculous reason, they thought, rolling over and getting up and having your knee hit the ball, having it come out of your hand meant that you didn't catch it, which was one of the worst overturned calls I think I've ever seen in replay. And there's been some pretty bad overturned calls in replay.
Yeah.
I mean, because it wasn't even like they let it stand. They overturned it based on that, which told me completely that they were wanting to keep that game competitive and didn't want it to be over that early. But sorry, I just kind of went off a little bit of a rant.
No,
but that to me, that would have been the one play that I remembered more than anything had the NFL not screwed him over with that.
That's Troy's career. When you say, give me one play, you end up rattling off 6 or 7, because once you think of one, it reminds you of another one. The most freakish play that I think I ever saw him make in terms of an interception had to be, and someone, I think it was Aaron Hoffmaster. Yeah, he put it in the live chat. He said it was the fingertip interception against the San Diego Chargers in the snow at Heinz Field, where that ball just looked like it was going to helplessly fall to the ground, incomplete pass. And all of a sudden you just see this giant mane have hair, and you're thinking there's no way.
You're saying, nah, he didn't catch.
There's no way he caught it.
That one.
And holy crap, he got his middle finger underneath the ball, and it didn't touch. I mean, that was absolutely insane. And someone else put this in the live chat, a play that I would not have thought of, but when they bring it up, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. And that is Mark Davison says, I'll put it on the screen here, when he tackled Chris Johnson in the backfield. That was a play where he shot out of a cannon, and he did the same thing.
I had that in my head.
Yeah, he did the same thing.
Chris Johnson was supposed to be so fast.
CJ2K. Yeah.
Troy Polamalu was twice as fast as him on that play.
There's 2 plays that come to mind where he did the same thing, and it's where there's the run play. It's kind of like that zone read stretch play, and he literally isn't even on the television screen. You don't even see him. It's not like there's this anticipatory, here comes Troy, there's a running back. He looks like he gets shot out of a cannon, takes the legs out from underneath the running back. The other play was in the AFC Championship game, I think in 2005 in Denver, and he made a play, almost was a safety.
Almost a safety. I mean, barely got the ball out.
I mean, you think about the one-handed interception against Tennessee after they won Super Bowl 40 in the opener, like when Kenny Britt went deep and he picks that play off, jumping over the line of scrimmage, tackling Kerry Collins, like you mentioned.
I was going to say, we have to say that one. That was at like the 1 yard line. So even if he would have been offsides, what was it? Like a 1 foot penalty? And it was just, he timed it so perfectly. Everyone was like, what just happened?
Well, who can remember the fourth quarter in the AFC Championship game? Or was this the divisional round game? I think it was the divisional round game against the Ravens where he jumped over the line of scrimmage and met Flacco on a quarterback sneak.
Yeah.
And Troy, if you watch that play again, is literally helpless off the ground. Like he's on top of other players and he's just trying to shove. He's trying to shove Flacco back, but he timed it perfectly. It's unbelievable. I was so excited. And Troy is every Steeler fan's favorite. I have never heard any Steeler fan say, I can't stand that Troy Polamalu. There's people that said Joey Porter talks too much, and people said that they didn't like Lamar Woodley's conditioning, but Troy's one of those guys that absolutely everyone liked him. Everyone loved him. I mean, 43, the hair, the humility, which, my goodness, man. I mean, if there's ever a time where you can kind of be a little bit egotistical and say, for once, this is about me. I got myself into the Hall of Fame. He just did, everything was just pushed back to his teammates and his coaches and his family that got him there. I mean, probably the most humble National Football League professional player ever. Dave, you ever met anyone that doesn't like Troy Polamalu?
No, but I mean, even if people didn't like him because he was a Steeler, everyone respected him because of the person that he was, let alone the player that he was.
He wasn't dirty. I mean, he
No,
hit
he
hard and he
wasn't dirty.
definitely played the line of scrimmage like a linebacker, but there was nothing dirty about his game. You could talk about Joey Porter's trash talking. I think about in other sports, like for instance, the Penguins just beat the Caps. So this is on the top of my head.
Yes.
Everyone, myself included, they hate Alex Ovechkin if you're a Penguins fan, but if Alex Ovechkin's on your team, you love him. You know what I mean? And it's similar to like Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady is the most vilified member of the player in probably Steelers fan history, at least in recent history. But if Tom Brady was your quarterback, I don't think you're going to be complaining too much. I mean, my gosh, the guy just does nothing but win. So it was really awesome to see Troy Polamalu get inducted. And it was really, really cool to see his teammates. I know Ryan Clark took to Twitter and said that when he saw Troy break down and cry a little bit, he said, man, he just never would have seen him being that way, and he was just happy that he was there. Now, you said that Dale Lally of DKPittsburghSports.com had put out an article kind of giving a summation of everyone thought that Troy was really mad at the Steelers. And I'm sure there was a little angst there. He wanted to continue. Reports were he wanted to continue to play at the end of his career. And the Steelers said, look, it's time. It's time for us to move on. Either you're going to retire or we're going to release you. And he ended up retiring. What did Dale Lally kind of say about that, though?
Yeah, this is what came out this morning where Dale Lally, he was there. It was funny. I actually saw him in the background of several shots of where they were doing different things. And he got a chance to talk to Troy. And it was when Troy stopped his career, he just completely cut the cord with the NFL. He needed to either be immersed in that life or completely away from it. He wasn't the kind of guy that was just going to hang around and still be there, because I didn't get to see it all. That I don't know if it was too hard, but he said there's no animosity towards the Steelers. So that's, to me, I think that's an enormous story. Great job by Dale Lally getting that. He just, I mean, look, he hasn't made any NFL appearance since his last game with Polamalu.
No, you're right.
It wasn't just the Steelers.
You're right. A lot of people had kind of raised their eyebrows when he didn't come back when they honored Super Bowl 43? Not this year, but last year. I don't think he came back. James Harrison was there even after the way he left and went to New England.
Yeah.
It was just everyone, that was the narrative in Pittsburgh and amongst Pittsburgh Steelers fans was that Troy was really angry. And it makes sense. It makes sense when he says he's just going to cut the cord from the NFL. But Troy Polamalu gets in. I guarantee, will headline that 2020 class of 20 people. I have family that live in Canton, Ohio, and I actually have already started thinking about, like, man, if there's a time to go, is there going to be a better year than this year to go? I mean, the Steelers are going to play in the Hall of Fame game most likely. Well, let's say it's a guarantee. They're going to have 3 individuals inducted into the Hall of Fame. Wouldn't that be awesome? I told my wife, I said, do you know how long that ceremony is going to be? I mean, that's 20 people. There are times where I think when they induct 5, I think it's too long. They're going to induct 20 people. They have to do it. Are they going to do it in multiple days? I wonder. Like, I'm curious.
I was going to say, are they going to split it up and everything?
They would have
I don't
to.
know.
That would be like a 4-hour event. 4 hours.
Well, you think that 4 hours? Seriously, you think it?
You think that's
hours?
short? You think it's longer?
I think it would have to be. I mean, come on, these guys. I mean, how many times do you get inducted to the Hall of Fame? Okay. Yeah. Once ever, possibly, and most people don't. I mean, just think of the number of people on the planet that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When you get that moment, you deserve that moment for as long as you can have it. So I wouldn't. Okay. The last thing I want to do is see them cut down. Oh, well, you can only talk for, blah. I don't want to do that, because that's wrong to do to these guys.
I don't think players, coaches, or contributors would ever abide by that anyways. I'm always reminded of the Jimmy V speech where he says, he's dying of cancer and he's standing at the ESPYs and he's talking about this award and he goes, oh, look at this. Look, they're telling me I got 10 seconds. He goes, I got cancer tumors all over. Like, I care what they say. That's what players would do,
Exactly.
There's you got 10 minutes. It's like what I think of all these speeches. I think Troy's, let's set the over under Troy's acceptance speech, 4 minutes. You taking the over or the under?
I'll tell you.
I don't think he's
a man of few words. I don't see it less than 4 minutes. I really don't.
You think it's?
I'll take
I
the
don't think he's
over.
going to say
I don't
much.
think he's going to go long, but I'm not going to say 4 minutes. I mean, what's the normal length of a speech there? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know. I'd be interested to see who he gets to introduce him. Most people are suggesting Dick LeBeau. But
I would not be shocked if it was Ryan Clark.
That's true too. That's true too. He talks a lot about his teammates, and I think if I were him, it might be difficult to pick just one, because he.
But I mean, he played. That's who he. I mean, people don't understand that. You've got to give props to Ryan Clark, because Ryan Clark just played so well with Polamalu to allow him to do what he did. Because basically, Clark's like, I'm letting him do his thing, and I'll cover the other responsibilities all the time. I mean, those guys had to work together so well. So that's the only reason I suggested him.
Yeah. So Troy gets in. We all knew that. Yeah. And we knew that Troy was going to be a slam dunk. And I don't think everything you heard, like Peter King of NBC Sports, he said that the deliberation was not long for Troy Polamalu, his name to be brought up. And it was funny because I was on yesterday when they started the meeting for the deliberation for who was going to be inducted into the modern era class of 2020. They had all these videos of people that were campaigning for specific players. Everyone talks about how it was Ed Bouchette when Jerome Bettis was up he had been a finalist for several years. And Ed Bouchette, then the Post-Gazette stood up and talked about Bettis, and they said it was his speech that kind of got him in. He's the one that campaigned so hard for John Stallworth as well. And they actually recorded these videos of these people speaking about specific players like Edgerrin James and Reggie Wayne and Steve, is it Atwater? They also inducted from the Broncos.
Steve Atwater.
Yes. So all these people, and I'm like, well, where's the one for Troy? Like, I'm scrolling up and down Twitter. I'm like, am I missing this? Where's someone campaigning for Troy? Well, probably
didn't have to. You didn't have to. You know what? All you had to do was show like 30 seconds of highlights, and you're like, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It was funny because my parents are in town to watch the Super Bowl. We always watch together, it seems like. And my dad's like, well, who else got in? And he said, Steve Atwater. He's like, really? I'm like, I could. He's like, do you really think he should have been in? I'm like, I just remember that hit he made on Christian Okoye where they met right in the middle there. And because he was a hitter. But it's funny because the only reason I'm bringing him up is because Troy said it's so neat to go in the same year as Atwater, because that was someone that he looked up to before he got into the league.
Another interesting tidbit, and I'm not sure if this is true or not. This would take a lot of research, and I'm not suggesting you do it. But in his interview in the hallway with Missy Matthews of Steelers.com, I'll say it again. Some people say I'm the Missy Matthews of BTSC. That was a comment, by the way, in case anyone doesn't get that joke. He said that he thinks this might be the first time that a coach is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame the same year as a player that he drafted. I would be curious to see if that actually holds up. I mean, it might actually be easier considering how many coaches have been inducted and look at that year's class and if they drafted anyone. It is pretty cool that Bill Cowher, and he drafted Polamalu in 2003 and they traded up to get him. And Polamalu spoke a lot about how he saw the 412 area code on his phone. He's thinking, oh man, he wanted to stay on the West Coast. He wanted to be in San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, LA, anywhere like that. And he's going to cold and snowy and dreary Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but it turned out. Now, I have a question because we are going to celebrate Troy Polamalu, and we have been for the first 20 minutes of the show. Man, is Hutchinson that much better than Alan Faneca?
All right, here we go.
Me. If they weren't going to, no, hold on. Let me say before you. I know you have a rant, and I'm going to give you your time. If you're going to let in a guard. Any guard, if they would have said no guards, if Hutchinson didn't get in and Faneca didn't get in, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But to put Hutchinson in over Faneca, I was like, come on. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
All right. My thoughts are this. You know me, I'm a numbers guy. Did Alan Faneca get robbed because another lineman went in ahead of him this year that he was better than? Yes. But that's not the tragedy. The tragedy was when he didn't get in last year. Yeah. Because if you look at just the numbers of the offensive linemen who have gone in the Pro Bowl before Faneca, It's ridiculous. And what's the best measurement for numbers for offensive linemen? It's got to be the awards. It's got to be the Pro Bowls and All Pros.
All Pros, stuff like that. Yep.
So Faneca, 13 years, 9 Pro Bowls, 6 All Pros. Hutchinson, 11 years, 2 less years, but 2 less Pro Bowls and 1 less All Pro. So you could say they're close. But the year before was, I can't even say his name right. Kevin
Mawai, I think.
Mawai, yeah. I butchered names worse. Yeah, I don't know, but I butcher him worse than Lance. Okay, he played 16 years, so he played longer. He had 8 Pro Bowls and 3 All Pros. So Faneca had twice as many All Pro seasons as Mawai. I can't. Maui. Say the name for me, Jeff, rather than laugh at me.
You think you're saying Maui from
Maui, yeah.
I think it's Kevin Mawai.
I'm afraid I'm saying.
Kevin Mawai.
I'm saying Malawi. Yeah, Mawai. Thank you. Mawai. Get it in my brain. Mawai. I don't know. Mawai. Both the past 2 years. Now, the biggest thing that I have seen with some people saying with Faneca was he seemed like a bit of a complainer in his day. He didn't like that Ben Roethlisberger, that he was playing for a rookie when Ben came in, and then he left and went to the Jets and blah blah. I'm like, you know what? That should not mean absolutely anything. It really shouldn't. So Alan Faneca is one of the best guards to play in that generation. He needs to be in there. It would have been great to see him go in this year. I'm not surprised that they didn't do too many Steelers all at one time. But he really should have been in last year's when he really should have gone in.
I agree. And a lot of people, Ed Bouchette being one of them, publicly said on Twitter that he will probably get in next year when you look at the potential players that are going to be up for nomination. And it's so weird. It's kind of like a popularity contest. There's not a lot of linemen in general that are in there that probably should be. But you know what? The Pittsburgh Steelers have a pretty cool trio. And it's funny, I was at the gym this morning and I was a guy that I guess is a Steeler fan. I had never had a conversation with him, but he found out that I like the Steelers and I told him about the website and stuff. And as we were walking out of the gym, he said, you know what? I never liked that Mike Tomlin guy. I've always been a Cowher guy. And I said, it's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. And I said, I don't mind Tomlin. I said, I like Cowher too. I said, but most people forget all those early years of Cowher. He got to the Super Bowl in 95 and then they got into this, get to the big game and lose the big game. But when you think of Bill Cowher, because we did talk about Cowher getting in because we knew about that for a couple weeks. What do you think of when you think of Bill Cowher? We did this with Polamalu. Let's do it with Cowher as well. What do you think of? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
The chin. just his demeanor on the sidelines and the scowl of the face, and that's what everyone says with the chin. That just his intensity and his general demeanor whenever he coached. I know you could talk about the accolades, but when you say Bill Cowher, I just that burly face with the mustache where he's like ready to just go off on somebody, and honestly, him shoving the photograph in the ref's pocket as they ran off at halftime, which basically started a big push for those kind of things to be under instant replay.
No, you're right. And the funny thing is I don't know why. I really don't know why. But after Super Bowl 40, he's standing on the podium. He has the Lombardi trophy. I want to say it's Mike Tirico that's interviewing him. And I'll never forget him saying, "This is for Dan," meaning Dan Rooney. Mm-hmm. Like he said, "I finally got you one of your own," because all the other Super Bowls, the previous 4, the Chief was still there. And Dan was a huge part of those teams. I don't want to underscore. I want to make sure I say that because this is for you, Dan. You finally got one of your own. And I just remember I was like, man, that's a really classy move from a head coach to say to your owner that he's been busting his hump just to get this for you. And it's been a long time coming after all those AFC disappointments and at home. And you think about the Denver game and the Patriot games, plural, and all those things. And it was just really cool. I've always thought that Bill Cowher, I remember watching press conferences with my dad and him wearing those crazy sweaters every Tuesday. He had his weird sweaters. Like he wore the ugliest sweaters ever. You go from Mike Tomlin, who's always in Steelers gear, always has a whistle around his neck. Even in his last press conference, they'd had no more practices. He's there at the podium with a whistle around his neck. I want to say, Coach, the season's over, bud. You can take the whistle off for a little bit, But Cowher, I mean,
can't let it go, Jeff. You
yeah, I know.
can't let it go.
Thaddeus brings up Cowher kissing Cordell on the sideline when he hit Greg Lloyd's shoulder pads, rush the quarterback, like things like that. Cowher was as much like his own enigma. He was his own personality that was not just the Steelers' success. He was Cowher power. He was the chin. He was the spit. He was the growl. He was everything. And I love Bill Cowher. And like I think Brian Davis said it on a Steelers preview, he was the coach of our youth, because I wasn't alive for Chuck Noll coaching the Steelers. You were maybe the waning years that you don't remember
because,
probably.
Cowher, that was my freshman year of high school, was his first year coaching. So when I was in elementary and middle school, it was Chuck Noll.
And what's crazy to think, Mike, or I said Mike, I'm reading the live chat, Mike's. What's crazy to think, yeah, I know that happens. What's crazy?
You've called me worse.
I have, that's true. What's crazy to think, Dave, is that there's a generation of Steeler fans that are talking about Bill Cowher the way we are with Chuck Noll. Because it's here we are going into this.
That's so true. Man, I never thought of that.
Here we are going into the 2020 season. In 2007 is when Mike Tomlin was hired after Bill Cowher retired after 2006. It's just crazy that there's young kids that are probably grown up being Steeler fans like we were. And like, I don't really remember Bill Cowher too much. Well, let me tell you something, kids. If you're listening to this podcast, just go back on YouTube and just YouTube Bill Cowher. You can just type in Bill Cowher highlights, and I guarantee you'll find some really, really funny stuff and some awesome stuff and some interviews, because he was a great coach. I don't care what anyone says about, he won that one for the thumb. Should he have won more? But I'll say this, and I said this to the guy at the gym. The one thing that Bill Cowher has over Mike Tomlin, and Brian Anthony Davis wrote the article for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com about how if Cowher is getting in, Tomlin will probably get in. In my opinion, the one thing that deciphers the two of them right now is that Cowher didn't have a franchise quarterback until the last few years, whereas Mike Tomlin has had that quarterback the entire career. So keep that in mind. So there you go. All right. Any other thoughts on Bill Cowher before we move on?
It's just, he was such a contrast to Chuck Noll. If you think about it, I mean, Chuck Noll was very, very, I would say, intense and straightforward with his players. And I like to hear Tunch and Wolf talk about stuff with Chuck Noll. Those are some of my favorite things to ever hear when I hear from them. And that Cowher, but Noll didn't really want to see that way in front of anybody else around other side, outside of the team. Cowher, man, he just put it out there for everyone, and it was just so different. Is really what I think made him stand out whenever he got that job and was really pushing forward in his first couple years of coaching.
When you think about that time frame when he was hired, I mean, coaches were more stoic. They were expected to be stoic on the sideline. I can only think of, correct me if I'm wrong. What is it? I know his last name is Weish. Is it Steve Weish that used to coach the Bengals?
Sam.
Sam, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes. And he passed away this past year.
He recently just passed away. Yeah, probably about a month ago. He was the one that grabbed the microphone and said to the crowd, this isn't Cleveland, and he would run up and down the sideline. He kind of, it's hysterical, but he kind of was similar to Cowher in the fact that he wasn't I'm going to stand on the sidelines. I'm going to be stoic. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything, because everyone brings up Lombardi, and Lombardi yelled and screamed, but you go back and listen to some interviews with like Bart Starr, and they would say in the game, he was awful. He was an awful coach. He had no in-game adjustments. He just yelled and screamed on the sidelines. Like, what the hell's going on out here? All that stuff. But it's crazy. It's crazy to think about how Chuck Noll and Cowher gets a good point with the differences. And lastly, let's get to Donnie Shell. What a faith-filled man as you get to know him. And I never got to see him play. But I know that a lot of people had been campaigning for a very, very long time for this man to get into the Hall of Fame. And I think that I think there's two people right now that I feel should be campaigned for hard to get into the Hall after he is inducted, and that's L.C. Greenwood and Bill Nunn as a scout. But knowing what you know about Donnie Shell, I mean, what comes to mind when you think of him getting into the Hall of Fame?
he would just let me think about it. See, I did. How do I say it? I was old enough to see Donnie Shell play, but I wasn't really thinking about, oh, I'm watching Donnie Shell, if you know what I mean. My brother saw him play in person.
Mhm.
The one time he went to a game as a kid. So, but when I hear Donnie Shell, I just he's the torpedo. That's what you got to
Yeah.
think of, is that just the way he played. And I mean, to have the number of interceptions he did as a strong safety, which he still has the record for number of interceptions by a strong safety, and yet he still had the fumble recoveries and everything. And just it's the biggest thing I think of with Donnie Shell is, how in the world was he not in the Hall of Fame already? How did this tragedy happen?
Steelers
And I think
bias.
it was it.
Steelers bias.
Yeah, and well, I think I said, I might have been in the preview or somewhere that I said before, is how many national NFL people didn't realize he wasn't in the Hall of Fame, because that's the kind of player he was. He should have been there. He's finally going to be there. They're finally fixing, righting the wrong. So congratulations. It's kind of, if they could get the LC Greenwood in there, you would almost feel like it would be a close to the era.
Yeah.
But it's just, I mean, think, Joe Green is the only guy left from that defensive line that's still with us today. So the rest of them are gone. And this is what happens when we move on. I mean, this was before I became a fan. Like I said, I was 2 years old when the Steelers won their fourth Super Bowl in the 70s. And with all this, these players need to go in when there's still people that watch them play in their day. So.
I agree 100%, because you see these players that have passed away. They get into the Hall of Fame, decades after they played, and you have a generation, including myself, that say, "Who is this guy?" And sure, when you see the NFL films breakdown of them playing and things like that, you're like, "Oh, well, this guy was pretty worthy of a Hall of Fame jacket." But it is. I agree with you. As the 1970s teams slowly start to fade, it's important to get these guys recognition.
Here's a great question for you, Jeff.
What's up?
How many Super Bowls do the Steelers have, if not for Bill Nunn?
Oh, well, some might say, what does the NFL look like without Bill Nunn?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because he was the first that went to those historically black colleges and started to recruit these players from schools like South Carolina State, and who else is from South Carolina State? Javon Hargrave. The Steelers. Yeah. So it's definitely, and that's where Donnie Shell went to school, I believe, was South Carolina State. So yeah, you're right. I mean, Bill Nunn is worthy if as a contributor and how he changed the game. Absolutely. I think if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know much about Donnie Shell, you could look up one play, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell me what that is, Dave. What's the one play? Go to YouTube, type it in, and it's all you need to know about Donnie Shell.
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the setting of it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it was a hard hit against a very legendary.
Well, it was the Earl Campbell hit.
Yes,
but all I can say is the Earl Campbell hit.
That's all you got to say. That's all you got to say.
Yeah,
he broke his ribs.
But I mean,
he broke his ribs.
Ribs. That's what it was. And knocked him out for the game. And they said that basically won the game. They're like, who was that was saying? Might have been Joe Green that was saying, "Man, it stunk for Earl. We never want to hurt a guy, but man, we were happy to see him on the sideline and not on the field because it was early in the third quarter, or something like that where this happened, and he had like run all over him in the first half." And Donnie Shell comes up, and I can't set that play up in the way it deserves to be set up to say what the situation was. But
so you just got to watch it. You just have to go to YouTube.
Yeah.
You just have to search Bill. I'm struggling. We're talking about Bill Nunn. I'm all over the place. Donnie Shell, Earl Campbell hit. That's all you have to type in, and you will find any number of videos that are live. And you see the play where Earl kind of gets tripped up in the backfield, and Donnie Shell comes in and just finishes him off. And it is as hard a hit as you'll ever see. It's clean. Wouldn't be flagged. It's not like one of those hits where you're talking about Jack Tatum, where if he did that in today's game, he'd be kicked out of the league. It's like Montez Perfect type stuff. But this was not that. So Snowman puts $5 in the tip jar. Save me from myself, please. We're lucky. We're lucky as Steeler fans to have three great head coaches, Noel, Cowher, and Tom. And I have to be honest that as a Steeler fan, and even as someone that was not alive really to see, Chuck Noll even coach. He was alive. I obviously was I was part of the site when he passed away. But for me, I take pride in telling people three coaches. They've had three head coaches. That is a source of pride for me, almost as much as 6 Super Bowls. You agree or disagree?
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to remember when was Noll's. I always get the year mixed up of when Noll's first year was coaching. It was six. I keep wanting to say 67, but I've also been using that number a lot recently because that's the last year the Steelers didn't have a first round pick.
Yeah.
So I knew it was somewhere around there. It was pre-Joe Green, but to go that long, I mean, in my lifetime, and I'm older than you, in my lifetime, and basically 10 years before I was born is when they had Chuck Noll, then Bill Cowher, then Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the Browns to have 3 head coaches in 1 year, which wouldn't shock me at all.
Oh my God. Well, that's a different topic for another. But that Michael Toole, he is in our live chat a lot. He's been asking this question multiple times. And at this point, we'll open up the live chat for questions. It can be anything Steelers related. If you want to talk about the Super Bowl, you can. But you know what? If you're like me, you'd rather talk about the Steelers. That's one of the reasons why I started podcasting about the Steelers is that listening to ESPN radio, I got sick and tired of hearing nothing but the Patriots and Cowboys all day, every day. So what I do, I'm going to talk about the Steelers because you probably want to talk about the Steelers. You'd probably rather hear us wax poetic or me butcher words talking about Troy Polamalu, Bill Cowher, and Donnie Shell than you would hear about Jimmy Garofalo and Garoppolo. I say Garofalo on purpose. That's what Lance called him, Jimmy Garofalo. About Jimmy G and all these. Look, Steelers. That's right. So Michael Toole says, Dave and Jeff, if you could pick a coach for our Steelers for the next 5 years, would you pick Cowher or Tomlin? Let's assume that they're in their primes and it's not like Bill Cowher is, go ahead.
That's a really good question. Honestly, I'm in today's NFL, I think Mike Tomlin is more suited for the NFL of today. And I think Bill Cowher was more suited for the NFL of his time. I don't know that Cowher would be as successful even if he came back to coach now, that other people are saying, we got to convince him to come back. I'm very happy with Coach Tomlin. He's not perfect. Cowher wasn't perfect. Noel wasn't perfect. But I think this past year showed more than anything that he was able to get a lot of good play out of his players. And I'm going to stick with the guy we got.
Yeah. I think Bill Cowher, I think that Bill Cowher definitely could still relate to players today, but he's a hard line coach, more so than I'm sure that it's kind of that hard line has been more and more flexible as the coaches go on. Chuck Noll ran a very tight ship, and then Bill Cowher ran a tight ship, but in a little different way. And I think most would say that Mike Tomlin, he's known for saying, I will treat everyone fairly, but that does not mean I will treat everyone equally. And that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. They think that that's like you're playing favorites and all that stuff. And I want to say, well, then that means that you've never coached before, because if you've ever coached at
absolutely.
any type of, if you've ever, like if you've coached at high school, we'll put it that way. If you're a head coach of a high school sport or above, you understand that not everyone's treated the same. And that's just the way it is. That's life. That's life at work, in the workplace. It's I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, you don't treat everyone the same in order to get the same production from them. You might have one player that if you get in his face and scream, you go out there and you do what you got to do, they're going to get hyped up and they're going to go out there and do that. You do that to another player and it's going to do nothing for them. So the same recipe doesn't work for every person and for every player. So you need to figure that out and know your players in order to get the most out of them. That's just what I think.
Yeah. It's every player, every person is a unique individual in how they respond, like you just said. Now, Aaron Hoffmaster, he says, this is kind of tough because, well, we don't know how long Tomlin's going to be the coach. But he said, who do you think is going to be the coach after Tomlin?
That's, oh, I don't know. Hopefully, yeah, a lot of people who don't like Mike Tomlin will say this. Hopefully, some kid who's playing in high school right now, which in other words, which means it's going to be a while from now. But let's say Coach Tomlin decided he only wanted to coach for a couple more years. I already talked about. I mean, we talked about this when the whole notion of Washington wanted to trade picks in order to get Tomlin. Well, could the Steelers have anyone they would like? And the two names that I said that I liked was, but a lot of people say, don't ever pick a coordinator. Don't ever pick an offensive coordinator from an offensive minded head coach or a defensive coordinator from a defensive minded head coach. But I think we're starting to see that that's not necessarily the case anymore. But I would love to see Byron Leftwich come back and be the coach of the Steelers. I think that'd be neat.
Yeah, I have no idea. I could throw names out there, and it's just like blindfolded darts. I mean, you really have no clue what's happening. Thaddeus Kennedy asks a good question. He says, Jeff and Dave, do you see any current Steelers who you think will be first ballot Hall of Famers? The first question is Ben Roethlisberger going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Yes.
I agree. I think that he is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He's been to 3. But correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's ever been All-Pro, has he?
No, he has never been All-Pro.
But then again, you look at the quarterbacks in his era. And
exactly. It was always Brady or Manning and those. I'd say the only way Roethlisberger wasn't going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer was if all those guys, if he was going up against Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. I mean, I still think he's in over Eli, and Drew Brees, if they were all eligible for the first time the very first year. That's the only way that someone like that, where it would be like, hey, we're just going to take 1 or 2 of them. So other than that, I mean, Ben is right there. He's hopefully we're talking about in 7 years from now that he can play out the rest of his contract and still be good to go. But I think
first ballot Hall of Famer other than Ben. I mean, if you think about some guys their careers are just so young, you have no idea where they're going to end up. But like maybe Minka Fitzpatrick, if he continues on his current trajectory, could be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
TJ Watt.
TJ Watt is another one. Here's a tough one. Cam Hayward.
I'm telling you, Cam Hayward.
I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve of the Hall of Fame. I'm saying first ballot is the question.
He's even the cat. I don't know about that because of the position he plays and how often do they really do defensive tackle, defensive lineman into the Hall of Fame. Because I was going to say the same thing. What about like Pouncier to Castro? But it's not a sexy pick to have offensive linemen go in on the first ballot. So I think the biggest thing against those guys being the first ballot Hall of Famers are the position they played. But I can go on and on and on and on about Cam Hayward, about how he is great and he's still not getting nearly enough credit for how much of a beast player and fantastic human being he is. He should be the biggest role model of not just the Steelers, but of the NFL. I mean, he's fantastic. He works hard. He plays hard. He's so much better. If he's got to take on the 3 blocks to have someone else make a play, then that's what he does. He's not out there just screaming for himself. He's just so good. I can't say enough about Cam Hayward. That's why I wear his jersey. He's
well, not only that, you want to respect the most about Cam Hayward, no matter what happens. Think about the darkest days of the last 5 years. I would probably say those were the days following the 2017 divisional loss to the Jaguars. Let's be honest. Those are probably that or that season when, the Jesse James didn't catch it. Like those were the darkest days of probably the last 5 years for the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base. He was always there to answer questions. Absolutely. Always there. There are players that just won't show up for media sessions, say they're not available. He is always available. Put a microphone in front of his face. He's going to answer the question. He's going to answer it honestly. That's what I respected the most about Cam Hayward. And that's why he's a captain on the team. My goodness. He leads by example.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people I know would like to see like, oh, when's TJ Watt going to be a captain? I'm like, the only way he's going to be captain is if they have 2 of them on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Because Cam Hayward is just, and I think TJ would feel the same way, that there's just something about him that I don't know. I get speechless.
No, I know. Hey, here's a funny story. It's so total sidebar here. TJ Watt down in Orlando for the Pro Bowl. If you have to go back, scroll down on the Steelers feed until you get down to like the videos that they did. Minka Fitzpatrick was wearing one of those GoPros on his chest, and they've got the footage. It was hysterical. So they say they have special teams practice. I don't know if you watched this, Dave, or not. And so they're talking to Minka about he's the up man on the punt team, and he can call fakes whenever he wants. All he has to do is make this one call, and the ball will be snapped directly to him. And Minka's like, well, I'm just going to call a fake every time then. Like, I'm literally going to call a fake every time and run and just throw the pass. And the coach is like, well, not every time. He goes, no, if I'm up here, I'm getting that ball every time. And then TJ Watt comes over at one point and he he looks into the camera and goes, I didn't come here to play teams. They said, shout out to Danny Smith. I didn't come here to play teams.
Oh, I missed that. That's hilarious.
I thought that was so funny because you got to think these are the best of the best in the game that aren't in the Super Bowl, and they have them on special teams practice, and they're like, I did not come down here to play special teams. Like, what am I doing?
Well, and I think that's why I was really happy that they didn't do kickoffs in the Pro Bowl, because you have all Pro Bowl players out there running down the field for a kickoff. I mean, these guys probably hadn't done a kickoff since junior league.
Got to go back. I didn't come here to play teams. Okay.
We're going to have to use that one a good bit.
Yeah. Snowman, $2 in the tip trace. What about Hines Ward? He's been a semifinalist for probably the last 3 or 4 years, I believe. Never made it to the finalist category. He's never been to that last round. This is a tough one for me. At the position that he plays, you talked about Cam Hayward because he and DeCastro and Pouncey, they don't play the sexy position. Hines does play the sexy position, but he also doesn't have the ridiculous gaudy numbers to elevate him over other people. So when you think of Hines Ward as a Steeler fan, you think, yeah, Hall of Fame worthy. But if you're just a random voter and you're looking at a body of work, it gets a little bit dicey, doesn't it?
He plays a crowded position. Yeah. That's his problem. Because think about it. On offense, I mean, unless you group the entire offensive line together, which a lot of people do, then it's wide receivers are the most numerous players on the field on offense.
Yeah.
Because you can put 3, 4, sometimes 5 of them out there at a time. So there's a lot of, but they're not going to put in that many wide receivers into the Hall of Fame in a year. So as a Steeler fan, I think Hines Ward should be in the Hall of Fame. But if I take off my Steeler bias glasses, it gets really, really difficult. So I'm going to continue to say yes as a Steelers fan, but I don't know that I could win that argument in a court of law.
For me, I think about Lynn Swann. I believe Lynn Swann had to wait something like 14 years to get into the Hall of Fame. And that's a guy that made some of the best, most acrobatic catches in NFL history in some really big games. He had a short career. That was the big knock on him. So he didn't have the numbers. But if Lynn Swann had to wait 14, but he got in, I like to think that in the future, Hines Ward will get in eventually. But it's tough because there's always going to be other players coming up.
That's the problem, is that especially with more and more and more and more passing, there's going to be new players that are going to have bigger numbers every year coming out just because of that. And then when you compare the numbers, but I mean, he does have the Super Bowl MVP,
2 Super Bowl wins and a Super Bowl MVP at that. So keep that in mind. Last thing before we call it a show, Dave, I just want to get your thoughts on the fact that TJ Watt was, I guess you could say, snubbed for the Defensive Player of the Year award. I know that the 3 of us, myself, you, and Lance Williams, were in a text group texting, and Lance said that he understood. He predicted Gilmore was going to win it because his team made the playoffs. I said I disagree 100% because I think it's an individual award. You're the best Defensive Player of the Year. Whether your team makes the playoffs or not, I don't think it matters. But what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, you say it's not just stats. It's got to be the flashy stats, because I even saw it today. The comparison between Gilmore and Steven Nelson for this past year. Basically, the only thing Gilmore had on Nelson was the 6 interceptions versus 1.
You should write that article for the site this week.
Well, it hasn't been done before. Yeah.
No, it hasn't. You should.
Yeah. So that's, I don't think that Gilmore, I mean, and not only that, the Patriots get bounced from the playoffs in the first round because they have to play the 3 seed, because they can't beat the Miami Dolphins the final week of the season and that's because Gilmore looked, I mean, he gave up, how many touchdowns he gave up in that game? I mean, he looked terrible in that game.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and that's how he went out. And I know I'm a Steeler fan, so I'm always going to say TJ Watt. I'm going to say TJ Watt, but look at the numbers that he had and how, I mean, they want to talk about the 8 fumbles, but then they forget about the, 14 and a half sacks? I'm going to throw the wrong number.
14 and a half sacks and 2 interceptions. That is an
outside
linebacker.
The interceptions, all of them combined together, that he had the larger package of being player of the year than what Gilmore did. And I know Lance had that argument, but unfortunately that's the way they voted. They do vote it based on getting your team to the playoffs. But I also was looking back. I only went back so far because I was just looking at this morning after Lance got that going in my mind. And that is a lot of these defensive player of the years, their team makes the playoffs and they're out the first game.
Yeah. That's one more game.
So it's not like they've gone far into the playoffs. But the last defensive player of the year that didn't make the playoffs was in 2014, and it was JJ Watt.
There you go. If TJ Watt continues on his current trajectory in terms of play and performance, I think he'll have many more opportunities to win defensive player of the year in the future. Tremendous season. I did the pre-write for that news, and we chose to focus on Troy that night. And I saved my article for this morning about TJ Watt, and I had gotten all his yearly statistics: tackles for loss, pass defenses. He had 8 pass defenses. Let's not forget that too. That's more than some defensive backs. 2 interceptions, 8 forced fumbles. I think he recovered 4 of them himself, 14 and a half sacks, like 55 combined tackles. I think I'm reading off the correct stats that I have in my head. Just insane, a great year. But you know what? He has a lot to hang his hat on. Team MVP. He was all pro from multiple areas. It wasn't just AP, the Sporting News, anyone that did an all pro team. The Steelers had their trio that made it: Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then obviously he made the Pro Bowl for the 2nd straight year.
And he was selected the Fox Sports Defensive Player of the Year that came out earlier this week, which isn't a very high profile thing, but still, some people were smart enough to recognize that what he did at the position he played was more impressive than what I think. I mean, sometimes with corner, it's not even like Gilmore wasn't thrown at. I mean, he was thrown at more than what Steven Nelson was thrown at.
This is a good one to end on. I love a little dig at Brian Anthony Davis here. Ezra says, I only get jerseys of Steeler greats not from China. TJ jersey will be in my closet. The funny thing is that Brian Anthony Davis will not listen to this long enough to hear that, but I still love those little digs for getting his cheapo jerseys. So there you go. All right, last thing there, Dave. Super Bowl prediction. We didn't do it on the preview. I said that I think the Chiefs are going to win in a closer game, in a lower scoring game than people think. I said 27-24. Kansas City wins. Dave, what's your thoughts?
I did it yesterday when I filled in for Brian on the playoff. Was it the NFL playoff? I don't even know what the name of the show was.
NFL
playoff preview. Yes. With Nick, and our scores were almost exactly the same. I said 35-28 Kansas City. And I said, I wouldn't even be surprised if, I know that sounds like good round, all touchdowns, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some field goals, but they're going for a 2-point conversion to have the right scores and everything. But you and I made our picks for our official picks that we did on the website, which you do realize that if we took the against the spread and the over under and we combined our total records, they were identical. Because I beat you by 2 and against the spread, and you beat me by 2 in the over under. So, and we both
that doesn't mean we were good. That doesn't mean we were good.
Well, we were over 500. We were.
That's good. That's not bad.
And honestly, you were better with you were at, I think, slightly better with the over under than what I was with the against the spread. By like 4 games or 5 games, if I remember right. But it was pretty close. But we both picked the same thing. But I say my biggest prediction is, and this could be totally wrong, Kansas City, if it's the over, San Francisco, if it's the under, and my lock call was time of possession. It goes to the 49ers.
There you go.
They will win the time of possession.
There you go, folks. Take it to the bank if you want. We're not that.
If only you could bet on that one.
We're not that
Instead,
good.
you got to bet on what color Gatorade's going to get dumped on, or
that's
what
right.
shirt Andy Reid is wearing.
It'll stain everything. I tell you that right now. Well, Dave, thanks for taking the time. I know that you're busy. You've got family in to watch the Super Bowl. I know that everyone is excited to watch the Super Bowl. It's 2 hours away. Honestly, maybe we killed some time for you. But if you're like me, you didn't want to hear nothing but 49ers and Chiefs talk. You wanted to hear about the Steelers. So I hope you enjoyed this, whether you're listening on Monday or whether you're listening on Sunday. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Make sure behindthesteelcurtain.com is your one-stop shop for all your things Pittsburgh Steelers. And make sure you follow us on all of our channels. YouTube, search BTSC Steelers Radio. Like the videos, subscribe to the channel, set up your notifications so that you get every single show. You don't miss anything. Also on our audio platform, follow. If you're on iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Give us a great comment. It really, really helps in terms of getting us up there. We're already in the top 4 when you search Steelers, but we want to be higher. We want to be the top 1. So keep that in mind. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. For those that are on YouTube, we will see you next Sunday for another episode of the Steelers Q&A. Have a good one, everybody.